as we go through the next 1 to 2 years. More will fall away, but not in any way that hasn't already happened. There will be more spaces appearing, and the floor dropping in more in terms of humans, emotions, structures. And this group, and many like this group, will be lighthouses. So you will be the light on a height of perspective and a height of feeling. There will be ships and there will be rocks, and some will hit the rocks and some will manage to get around the rocks. And in terms of ascension and where we've moved to as a group, as a planet, as a people, the next levels of heart and seeing are available. And that's what some of you have already been experiencing in recent months. Inside the heart, there are eyes and an ability to immediately read the emotions when you're in front of somebody at higher levels than before. This is a little scary at first. And there is sometimes a compulsion to think you need to tell the person what you're feeling. And the easy way or the hard way, you get over that. And you recognize the opportunity is for you to keep going higher. And for your eyes to see more. Because all we have to do is hold a clarity of vision and feeling without doing anything. We've heard that in so many ways the last few days. From different angles, different perspectives, we're all completely different. Nobody in this room has had the same experience as anyone for 3 days. Every single individual has a different emotional story, practical story, information story. Conflict and judgment will be offered regularly. The invitation to walk into conflict or judgment will be offered regularly. So much of the emotional clearing that has taken place for so many in this group and other groups in the last decade has been to lose the trigger points. To lose the points where someone can poke you in the ribs and it hurts, or you even want to poke back. It's gone now. That bit's over. But the invitations to conflict and judgment will still come. And our way is to keep navigating into the space. Oncoming traffic, you go left or right. Unless the traffic is a mariachi band. One of the things that's challenging, I've witnessed time and time again and experienced in myself, when this is your energy field, is keeping a perspective on what's yours and what's theirs, because it can get very easily enmeshed. And the reason that we keep finding spaces is because we keep amplifying when we find spaces. And there is a lot of what we would call dark on Earth. It exists. So we're here not to focus on that. Because actually you can't fight dark. It's a useless, pointless, and debilitating fight. But you can amplify light. And the fastest way to do it is in here, and through your in-out journey, you stabilize, and you create. So the creator spark has been very alive in this room, and there is a sense of relief in lots of you, and there has been for months, about the emotional density that no longer exists in the same way as it did. Some of the others here are going, what? But it's a spiral. And you just reach a point on the spiral where the emotional density is not the same as it was. Or you can just deal with it purely by yourself. And then you really go somewhere. So keep finding the spaces that you can walk into and just be present in. Whether it's quietly in your own life, whether it's because you're working with a small group or putting things out there, It's irrelevant, really. We've heard that a few times. Sandra spoke about that so beautifully in her talk. What's also happening is an elevation of consciousness that needs stabilizing in the human form, because we are, to some degree, limited by our humanity, and it's a beautiful limitation, and it's only a group limitation. So as we as a group expand, which happens through the individual, we get to evolve and move forward. And this consciousness that is high seeing and high feeling just needs to be stabilized in the one. I've said before about energy that we're very like monkeys. If you show one monkey how to do something and they're in a group of 30, they'll all know how to do it in a week. A lot of our chatter and words get in the way, and a lot of the lack of understanding of how to emotionally balance can be tricky. So when you find your way to emotionally clear and emotionally balance, or your ways, and you start to move that, the higher mind, funny word, but the higher mind starts to come in. Many of you have experienced this through opening in the third eye, many of you through opening in the heart, many of you through opening the voice and communication. It was told to me once by the Z's that enlightenment can be crudely termed when somebody has reached and embodied 8 masteries in themselves, 8 areas. So many of you already had several masteries, and you're just trying to open the other areas to complete the circle and accelerate through the spiral. But we are here to ground it. It's great to fly off. It's lovely. Return to spirit, return home. But our actual job this time was to bring it into human form. But don't deceive yourself that that should make you encounter any resistance that you have to walk towards. If you experience resistance, walk away. Find the mariachi band. Avoid the oncoming traffic. Conflict and judgment will be strong in the next year. So you'll just have to stay on your toes with your eyes and your ears and your senses. This is why having such a clear emotional field is going to make life easier in so many ways for many of you who went through what I call the grief walk somewhere in the 2000s, the first decade. But one thing that is true of humans right now is they're far more open than we even perceive. Even if they're shouting, they're open, they want to open. So one word, one sentence, just might do it more than it did a few years ago. Just a thought, not an instruction. No one else is your job. We're our job. There will also be a great release of fear after 2012, when we're all still here. And that will help in some ways. And be aware in the psychically open people that you know, it's not a precursor for emotional balance. And the reason I say this is because there is a lot of emotion being activated right now in psychically open people who are still going through their fears of what they are picking up on in the collective fear around the world and what's going to happen in the next year. Some of you will have already walked through that. It took me about 6 weeks to get through it at the very beginning of this year. It wasn't easy. But the psychic field in people is beginning to correlate all of the stories about what will happen. So if you meet somebody who is psychically open, just remember that a psychic opening does not always mean a steady heart, a balanced emotional field. All of these areas in us are different. and they come together at different times and in different ways. Self-love and the release of self-judgment is the fastest way as a human to get into the heart and the purity of your own energy field and release some of the that you've maybe accumulated over the years in some of the relationships, because we can't help but be affected by each other. This is why we have to always clear and be alone and take time. Even if you're wonderful with clearing yourself, if you are involved in working with people, if you are involved in being around people and you are sensitive to energies, a tiny fragment of that person's depression or anger or judgment or fear can just sit at the edge of the energy field. So when you overload on people, there's a lot to release. So taking regular times to step back, away from engagement, away from interaction, because there is such a download coming in now for this group and these groups. You just have to be in your own center, and even if you're not conscious of what's coming in, it's being done to us. And it's very strong, and it's very loving, and it's available to everyone. The only reason I'm specifying this group and groups like this around the world is it takes a certain frequency to be able to, I guess, take it in at speed. Not that speed is desirable, but there is less that has to be burnt through before you can open to it. And to all of you, channel for yourselves. Even if it doesn't look the way you see other channelers, you can write. You can call on advice. It may not be words, but this is endless. There is so much energy up here. There's no feeding. There's no exhaustion. It's constant, 24/7. And you can forget to refuel. You can forget to ask for help. And if ever you catch the human stuff coming in, I can't ask for help. Remember, you're not dealing with humans. It's really important for us to remember the lighthouse principle. We are the house of light. Sometimes you might not feel so light, you might be going through something, but protecting this part of you, not from anything or anyone, but for yourself, holding a boundary of who you are in your energy field, drawing and going where welcome, avoiding the traffic, looking for the mariachis. It's going to be a wonderful couple of years for a lot of us, even though there will be other people in varying states. But we're through the tunnel. It begins. Thank you.